Welcome to Everything Fear. Today we're going to be looking at the top 10 female horror villains of all time. Hello and welcome to Everything Fear, your one-stop shop for all things horror. I'm Kit Tinsley, I'm a horror author, film academic and general horror geek. As I say, today we're going to be looking at my personal top 10 female horror villains of all time. If you enjoy this video, if you could please subscribe, give us a like and maybe tickle that bell icon to be notified when we upload future content, that would be great, thank you. Number 10, the female Cenobite. Portrayed by Grace Kirby in Hellraiser and by Barbie Wilde in Hellbound, the unnamed female Cenobite doesn't actually have that much screen time. However, like the rest of the Cenobites in the first two movies, she cuts a striking and imposing figure. With her bald head, bluish-hued skin, piercings, and let's face it, vaginal-looking throat wound, she is certainly a uniquely designed monster. Though it's never said, the fact that she's always at Pinhead's side, and that she's the only other Cenobite that speaks, sometimes seemingly critical of Pinhead's decision, it suggests that she is his second in command, and maybe looking to usurp him in some way. Barbie Wilde, who played her in the second movie, is now a successful author, and she wrote a short story for the Hellbound Hearts collection, which is actually a backstory for the female Cenobite. In this origin story, she was formerly a nun who was tempted by the pleasures and pains of the flesh. Number 9, Rose Armitage. Jordan Peele's directorial debut, Get Out, is a very powerful film. Taking inspiration from earlier movies such as The Stepford Wives, the film centres on a group of rich white people who have found the secret to eternal life by passing their consciousness into the bodies of young black people. The black people's consciousnesses are still inside their bodies, but they're subdued by hypnosis. They are, to all intents and purposes, a constant prisoner in their own bodies. The film has several villains within the Armitage family. The surgeon father, who performs the procedures. The psychotherapist mother, who hypnotises the black people to subdue their consciousnesses. The psychotic son, who takes a far more direct approach at dealing with any slip-ups. However, perhaps the most sinister of all is young Rose Armitage, played by Alison Williams. She is the one who selects and entraps the victims. She begins romantic relationships with them, getting them to love and trust her completely, before taking them home to meet her family. This is a task that she has done many times before, until her latest boyfriend figures out what's going on. Number 8. Carrie White. In many ways, it feels wrong to call Carrie a villain, as she's ultimately a victim herself. The real villains of the movie are her bullies and her fanatical mother. However, let's not forget that Carrie does murder a lot of people in this movie. Based on Stephen King's debut novel, Brian De Palma's 1976 movie is about a young girl with telekinetic powers. Carrie has been downtrodden her whole life by her religious and domineering mother, and the bullies who torment her at school. Carrie desperately wants to be normal, and just when her life seems to be turning around, a cruel prank sends her completely over the edge, and her power is unleashed in a lethal attack on her prom. Sissy Spacek plays this part so well. She's so vulnerable and broken and beaten. She makes for a very heartbreaking villain. Number 7. Baby Firefly. Sheri Moon Zombie's portrayal of Baby Firefly in House of a Thousand Corpses, The Devil's Rejects, and 3 from Hell is amazing. Part of a murderous family, Baby is often used as the lure, using her sexuality to lead people to their demise. However, in her own right, she is a crazy and brutal killer, often less in control than her brother Otis. Though there are jokes about the fact that Sheri Moon Zombie only ever gets cast in her husband's movies, there is no denying that in this role as Baby Firefly, she is absolutely brilliant. And I, for one, can't imagine anyone else playing the role. Number 6, Pamela Voorhees. Though often overshadowed by the infamy of her son, let's not forget that Pamela Voorhees was the original killer in the Friday the 13th series. Betsy Palmer plays her brilliantly within the movie. At first, seeming like one of the nicest and most stable people at Camp Crystal Lake, only for it to be revealed that she is completely psychotic, talking to herself in the voice of her dead son. A parent losing a child is possibly the best motivation for a serial killer within a slasher movie. Unfortunately, the movie ends with her decapitation, so she couldn't really return to the series apart from as a severed head. Number 5, Julia Cotton. Pinhead and his Cenobites became the poster boys and girls for the Hellraiser franchise. They appeared on all the movie posters, DVD covers, all of the promotional material. However, their part in the movie is actually very small. The real villains of the first movie are Frank and Julia. Their illicit affair behind their respective brother and husband's back is so passionate that they're willing to kill for it. Using her powers of seduction, Julia lures hopeless men back to the house in order for Frank to feed on them to come back to life. In Hellbound, it is Julia herself who needs blood to be resurrected, and her plans are basically to become the Queen of Hell. Julia is a villain in true fairy tale style, a wicked stepmother turned evil queen. Number 4, Sadako. This one really applies to both Sadako from the original Japanese movie Ringu and Samara from the American remake The Ring. I'm just going to say Sadako though, because I personally prefer the original movie. Sadako was a young girl with evil psychic abilities and the ability to imprint her thoughts and images in people's minds and on film. Her father threw her in a well where she didn't die instantly, ripping out her nails trying to climb up the slippery walls. The well was sealed and Sadako died. However, her evil psychic ability didn't. She curses a videotape that makes those who watch it die in 7 days. I remember watching the original movie for the first time late at night on my own. It was my first experience of Japanese horror, and I found it a really unsettling movie and a really unsettling experience. The way Sadako moves when she's crawling out of the well and throughout the television is just really chilling and unnatural. A really terrifying villain and a very unsettling film. Number 3, Elizabeth Bathory. The Hammer film Countess Dracula tells the story of Elizabeth Bathory, a Hungarian countess who may or may not have been one of the most prolific serial killers of all time. It's alleged that Bathory believed that bathing in the blood of young women would allow her to keep her youthful looks and beauty. This is the route that the movie goes down, showing that there is some supernatural element and making Bathory a quasi-vampire. In reality, Bathory was walled up within her rooms in her castle as punishment for her crimes, as at the time the idea of a noble woman being put to death or committing such crimes was completely unheard of, so it was all kept very quiet amongst the nobility. There is a lot of evidence to suggest that she was actually innocent of the crimes that she is accused of. She was a very formidable and very powerful woman with a lot of wealth and land, in a time where women weren't expected to have that sort of power. Her refusal to remarry after her husband's death meant that the rest of the nobility didn't like how much power she could wield. It's believed by some that rival nobility created these stories as a way to get rid of her. The truth, however, may never be known, and she makes for a great movie villain. Number 2, Rose the Hat. The villain of Mike Flanagan's excellent adaptation of Stephen King's Dr. Sleep is played by the amazing Rebecca Ferguson. Rose is the leader of a group of nomadic psychic vampires called the True Knot. The book and the movie are sequels to King's earlier work, The Shining. The True Knot feed on the psychic abilities of those who shine, particularly children. When I watched the film for the first time, it was literally like Rose the Hat had stepped off the pages of the book and straight into the film. That is how perfect the casting of Rebecca Ferguson is. Rose is an amazing blend of traits that make her a great villain. She has an ageless beauty. She has a softness, particularly when dealing with members of her own community. But she is vicious and sadistic when it comes to her victims, as pain and fear make the food they get so much better. This is a mesmerising performance of a truly brilliant villain. Well, before we get to the number one spot, I'd just like to say that this is a crossover video with my friend Kanan Becker over at Ghost Pirate Entertainment. Kanan is also doing a list of his top 10 female villains of all time, and we'll be doing a live on Saturday about the same subject. I'll put a link down to Ghost Pirate Entertainment in the description below. Now, before we get to number one, a few honourable mentions. The Alien Queen from Aliens. Now, the Alien Queen is a wonderful movie monster, an amazing piece of creature design, and the way she goes on the rampage after her babies, the eggs, are destroyed by Ripley, shows she has this fierce maternal instinct. However, her not being a human or humanoid character, I decided not to put her on the list. Regan McNeil. Now, everyone knows Regan from The Exorcist. She does some pretty vile things within that movie, and she's still terrifying to this day. The things she does, the way she looks, the way she sounds are all really unnerving. However, I felt I couldn't put her on the list as Regan is really the victim. She is possessed by the demon Pazuzu, who is male. Number one, my personal favourite female horror villain of all time, Annie Wilkes. Of all the villains on this list, for me, Annie Wilkes had to be number one. Stephen King's creation from his novel Misery was first brought to the screen in 1990 by Kathy Bates in the adaptation of that novel. Kathy Bates brought her to life in such a way that she actually won the Best Actress Oscar for her performance. So what is it about Annie Wilkes that makes her such a great villain? Well, for a start, she's not a fantastical monster or creature, and she's a very plausible character. We live in a world where psychotic people exist, where stalkers exist, and where murder, sadly, exists. Annie is a very real character whose mental illnesses are obvious. We need awareness of these illnesses so that people get treatment. Bates's performance within the film is fantastic, showing all the facets of Annie's character. Her kindness, her softness, her sadness, her temper, and her murderous nature. This depth of character makes her feel real, and that makes her even more terrifying. A younger version of the character was recently played in the second season of the Stephen King-inspired TV show Castle Rock. This time Annie was played by Lizzie Kaplan. She also plays the role brilliantly. This is a younger version of Annie, still trying to be good despite the urges within her. A more sympathetic version of the character for sure, but one that shows how she got to where she was in Misery. Well, that was my list of my personal top 10 female horror movie villains of all time. Did you agree with the list? If not, let me know in the comments who you'd have put in the list. Please go and check out Kanan's video on Ghost Pirate Entertainment. The link is in the description down below. And until next time, stay scared and stay tuned.